When we think about the early pioneers crossing the great American desert in the early 1840s, we normally think about the men who typically led the wagon trains west. We name the various parties after them, and most of the stories we tell are centered on their heroics or their failures. But if you step back and more closely examine the pioneers, you'll see that many of the true leaders and heroes of the great migrations were women from all walks of life. In many cases, they are the unsung heroes in the opening of the West. Take, for example, Narcissa Whitman and Eliza Hart Spaulding. They were leaders in their own right, playing an important role in establishing missions in Washington and Idaho. Traveling by sleigh, canal barge, wagon, river sternwheeler, horseback, and foot, they would become the first white women to cross the Rocky Mountains in 1836. Enduring the trauma of losing her young daughter at age 2, Narcissa Whitman would become a second mother to many children who came to the Walla Walla mission, including the 7 Sager children who were orphaned on the Oregon Trail in 1844. And Eliza Hart Spaulding would become the first of the missionaries to learn the native language of the Nez Perce Indians, translating Bible stories and hymns for them. Nancy Kelsey was the only woman in the Bidwell-Bartleson Party of 1841. After abandoning their wagons west of the Great Salt Lake, the party would make the rest of the journey to California on horseback and foot. Nancy walked most of the way across the deserts of Nevada and over the Sierra Nevada mountains, doing so barefooted while carrying her 1-year-old daughter, Anne. At only 18 years of age, she was the first white woman to reach California by overland trail. She would go on to become friends with Helen Murphy, who with her husband Charles Weber would become founders of the city of Stockton, California. As the unofficial matriarch of the Stevens-Townsend-Murphy Party, Mary Bolger Murphy's organizational skills, drive, and determination would see them safely over the summit of the Sierra Nevada in late November 1844. Just a week later, she would give birth to a daughter at Bear Camp. Settling in the Santa Clara Valley with her husband, Martin Murphy Jr., she would lead a prosperous and benevolent life, providing assistance to those in need and establishing educational institutions for future generations. 66 years old, with a bad hip, Tabitha Moffett Brown would make the arduous journey from Missouri to Oregon in 1846. After taking the untested and treacherous Applegate Cutoff, she would ride ahead on horseback through the Umpqua Mountains to find help. During her heroic journey, she would save the life of 77-year-old Captain Brown, literally pushing and pulling him along, refusing to let him give up. She would become one of the founders of the Pacific University and would start a school for children of depleted families. By 1851, she would have 40 children under her care in her boarding house. For her unmatched and unselfish humanitarianism, she would be known as the mother symbol of Oregon. Tamsen Donner was known as a good, caring little woman and a good shot with a pistol. Staying with her husband until his death in the Sierra Nevada, she too would succumb to the horrors of the Donner Party. Early on, she had expressed her concerns about leaving the known trail to California, saying that she could not understand how the men of the party could confide in a statement of a man of whom they knew nothing, but was probably some selfish adventurer. Sarah Armstrong Montgomery was a member of the Stevens-Townsend-Murphy Party of 1844. After spending 2 months in the Sierra Nevada, she would settle in California, only to be abandoned by her husband. She would then marry Talbot Green of the 1841 Bidwell-Bartleson Party. Unfortunately, Green would turn out to be Paul Geddes, who had absconded and embezzled funds from a Philadelphia bank. After divorcing Geddes, she would marry Charles Sawyer Wallace, a successful and respected lawyer. Sarah would play a prominent role in early California history, at one point owning the Mayfield Farm in Palo Alto, California. A shrewd investor, she owned stock in the San Francisco and San Jose Railroad and was the driving force behind the development of the California Avenue Station. A tireless advocate for women's rights, she was the first president of the California Woman Suffrage Educational Association. In 1846, the Donner Party would cut a path through the rugged Wasatch Mountains east of the Great Salt Lake. In 1847, the Mormons would improve that path, turning it into a trail over which thousands of Mormon settlers would travel. One of the first Mormon pioneers to use that trail was Patty Sessions. A midwife, Patty would deliver 14 babies on the trail while making the journey to what is now Salt Lake City. Known as the Mother of Mormon Midwifery, during her lifetime she would deliver 3,977 babies, with an amazingly high survival rate. Along with her brother, Moses Schallenberger, Elizabeth Schallenberger Townsend would make the journey from Council Bluffs, Iowa to Sutter's Fort in 1844 with the Stevens Townsend Murphy Party. Upon reaching the summit of the Sierra Nevada, Elizabeth would join 5 other members of the party in taking an alternate route to Sutter's Fort to bring back supplies for the main party. While described as being frail, she would make the perilous journey on horseback along Lake Tahoe and across the rugged Sierra Nevada through the Rubicon and American rivers, reaching Sutter's Fort on December 10, 1844. Attending to the ill during a cholera outbreak in 1850 in San Jose, Elizabeth and her husband, Dr. John Townsend, would both succumb to the deadly disease, leaving a small son who would be adopted by her brother, Moses. In 1845, trapper and guide Stephen Meek would lead over 200 wagons and 1,000 people over a cutoff across the eastern deserts of Oregon. Becoming completely lost, Meeks would abandon his role as guide, and after several long weeks and many days without food and water, 24 of the pioneers would perish before reaching the Dalles. Betsy Bailey, Lucy Jane Burnett, and Anna Maria King of the Savannah, Oregon Immigrating Company would survive the perilous journey. Betsy Bailey would do so while caring for her 7 children, ages 2 to 13. Between 1840 and 1869, over 250,000 immigrants would travel 2,000 miles to their new homes in a land that held both promise and uncertainty. Central to the success of these migrations were the contributions that the thousands of women, like the ones noted here, made along the way. Mother, doctor, cook, seamstress, confidant, guide, and leader. Without the strength and perseverance of these pioneer women, the story of the opening of the West would have been much different.